I had a mentor, and I'm going to get emotional. Tim last night told us that TEDx is about crying, but I'm going to make sure I don't do that. We all have a story. We all go through things. There's nobody goes through life without having a lot of good things and a lot of bad things happen. And I guess where we differ is how we deal with those things. So this is a little bit about my story. We interpret and reinterpret the things that happen to us as we go through life, and we try to understand what it is why we've made the decisions we do, and what we've done, and what it means to us. And our stories change as we get older, and we think about new things, new experiences to add to our life. My story is about a passion and a longing and a search. So I was very fortunate in the 80s, the mid-80s to the mid-90s. I got to move to the Canadian Rockies, and I spent all those years skiing and climbing and canoeing. And you can see that once upon a time I actually had hair on my head as well as on my face. And for me, the Rockies, it was just a gigantic playground. It was just magic. All I could think of was getting out, getting to the next peak, getting to the next river, getting to the next mountain range, doing the next trail. That was my life. University was kind of a sideline that when people ask me what I did, I say, well, I'm a student. So I could justify my life of just enjoying the outdoors. Every year, the ice, the waterfalls would freeze, and we'd head out and we'd climb. Thank you, by the way, to my friend Eddie Laporte for digging up these pictures. And this is really what I live for. I live for climbing. There was nothing else that I wanted to do in the world. I just wanted to be a climber. That was it. I even worked a job one summer just to get enough money for a pair of climbing boots. So climbing was my passion, and I needed to explore, but there was just something wasn't really, there was something missing. I kind of felt, what more is there? There has to be something else. I love the climbing, but it just really wasn't quite fulfilling me. And probably my last serious climb was a shooting gallery. And this is Mount Andromeda in the Columbia Icefields. I don't know if the laser won't work, but you can see a gully that runs down the middle. And I convinced my friend Eddie to go and do this, and he didn't really want to do it at all, but I was really determined. I wanted to do this climb. And shooting gallery, it wasn't called shooting gallery without a reason. On mountains, gullies are the garbage chutes of a mountain. All the rock fall, all the avalanches, everything comes cascading down through here. And so it was a very dangerous climb, but Eddie kind of followed, and we went. And there's nothing to say too much about the climb, but we got through, we survived it, but I guess something happened there, and I changed. There's something that just made me think there was something else that I had to do. And I left climbing, and I decided that the year before I had gone to Nepal, and I was traveling around, and I had a classmate in Hong Kong, so I traveled to Hong Kong, and she said, well, why don't you go to Taiwan? I think you'll like there. And I thought, okay, I'll go for a couple of months. And I arrived, I still remember the day, January 17th, 1995, arrived in Taipei, didn't know anything about the country, didn't speak any Mandarin, didn't know anything at all. But I immediately began learning Chinese, but after about a year, I was having a good time. I was enjoying life, I was teaching, and but I was kind of missing the excitement of climbing. And one day I saw some pilots paragliding out on the coast. And so I thought, okay, yeah, I got to do this. I got to get back into this outdoor stuff. And a mountain shop helped me out, and they contacted this man, Zhang Zhishan, who I only knew as the colonel, or Jiao Guan, or which is like coach or instructor. And nobody would teach, at that time, 1996, nobody wanted to take the risk of teaching a foreigner how to paraglide. So he was the only one willing to do this. And I really didn't know anything about him other than this old man, and he knew how to fly, and he was going to teach me how to fly. But he has a really amazing history. That's a whole other story too. He went with Chiang Kai-shek to Taiwan in 1949. He joined the Air Force. He lied about his age, joined at 15, and became a paratrooper, and eventually ended up setting up a stunt team. That was his office, and I spent a lot of time visiting him in that office. I just loved that place because of all the pictures and all the things he had, all the medals he had, and it was just so special to me to be able to go and hang out with him. So I moved to this place, and I lived here this is a view from my balcony. It was a very small place, but I lived in Green Bay. I was just across the road from the colonel, and I could look out the window, and I could see if the wind was on, and I could go up and I could fly. And this was fantastic. I could go up in the morning, I could fly, I could land on the beach and go home. I had a business, and things were going well. And my life just became, even though I had a business, I had a fiance, everything, my world was flying. The obsession came back stronger than than it ever did for climbing. And I was having a great time. But while I had the business, I was traveling all over, to Australia, to the Himalayas, to different places. I was competing. And in some cases, I went with the colonel to different competitions, and he was mentoring me, showing me how to live. But I probably didn't listen very much. I was far more interested in the excitement of flying. But all good things come to an end, and this was no exception. Maybe some of you I've told I crashed on a training run. I was preparing for a competition, and I broke almost every bone in my body. And both my legs were broken. I was very fortunate. I had a great doctor. I had a lot of surgeries on my left leg and my right leg, but I was able to slowly learn to walk again. But I was never going to be the athlete that I was. I was a pretty good athlete, and my life was changed. And I was 40 years old, and I went to the colonel, and I said, what am I going to do? Here I am. I was a 40-year-old man. My life, to me, was over. I had lost everything. I had lost my physical health. And I'm talking to this almost 80-year-old man about how old I felt. And he just told me, this is life, our past glories. No one remembers them. They fade, they go on, and you still have to make a life. And so what do? You just keep going. You laugh or you cry, and crying doesn't help for very long. So you learn to laugh. So my dreams were broken. It was the end of an era. I had to start all over with virtually nothing. This is a short video at this point, just to show you a little bit about who the colonel was. So you can see there he was at 90 years old. They kind of, who's this old guy who's still going strong? Nobody really remembered what he was about until this time. He was just rediscovered for making his noodles and things and the bread stuff. So this guy, here I am thinking my life is over, and this was the example he set for me, is that you just keep going forward. You keep making a life. So I realized I had to go back to the beginning too. So I went back, once I could walk well enough again, I started going back to climbing again a little bit, just to remember what it was I knew then, what I'd experienced and what was important to me. But it was different. After being down and out, completely broken up, I didn't see the world the same. I wasn't the same confident person. I wasn't the expert anymore. I struggled, and I saw things differently. I saw people differently. I saw people when they hurt, which I didn't see before. I saw my friends and in a new way, and I began rebuilding my life, and I began going to see people, and eventually I was able to start running again. I started cycling. I started backpacking through the mountains again. With my friends, I started to fly again. But it was quite scary. I was petrified that I was going to crash again. Next time would be worse. And those ghosts, they just don't go away. They stay. They never go away. They're still there. But you learn to push them back and go forward. So I started over, and starting over is never easy, but because you won't be the same. But you discover new things. You discover new things about yourself, and you discover new things about people. And finally, in 2016, I went back to Australia. I did my first cross-country 75-kilometer flight. But it wasn't like before, when I was just like driving so hard to beat everybody else. I landed, and I just enjoyed every second of being in the air, every second of just being on the road and watching the dust blow and waiting for a car to maybe come by that I could hitchhike back. It was... the ghosts were still there, but I was enjoying my life in a totally new way. Taiwan's highest mountain is 3,952 meters. It's not very difficult, but after living in Taiwan almost 20 years, from the very beginning, I somehow knew that I would only ever go to the top of Jade Mountain when I was time to leave. So finally in 2020, I went up to Jade Mountain, and I hiked up to the summit, and I knew it was time to go. It was ready to move on to something else after over 20 years. So some things that I've learned along the way, and I'll sum up later with what the Colonel really taught me, is that our passions need to be shared. They're meaningless by ourselves. They don't mean it too much unless we can share what we've had with somebody else. We need to remember our past. How did we get to where we are? Where did we go wrong before? What do we need to do differently? We need to observe the people around us. We need to really look at people and know that they have lives just like we do, and they have stories that they're building. We need to learn what people are willing to teach us. Starting over, it can definitely feel like failure, but we can also embrace it as an opportunity to do things differently than we did before. So after just about a few months after I left Taiwan, the Colonel passed away at 95, and the newspapers and the TV produced stories about him and how he's the record holder for 3,800 jumps. He established the first high-level paratrooper team, and they suddenly remembered all his glory. But in his old age, nobody remembered those things. But he didn't really care. I don't feel sad for him because he had a full life to the very end. So struggles are our chances to create a story that gives meaning to our life and the community. It's a short little video. I still love, my connection to the natural world is still the strongest. Just a moment. I still love hanging out with people. I still love doing things and climbing mountains, but I've rediscovered what it was like to go back and to be with nature, to be alone on the mountain, to turn and face the wind. And reach for the sky. I'm almost 60, but I'm still reaching for the sky. Excuse me, a little emotional there. Show this. So if I wanted to sum up what the Colonel taught me, it's to observe the people around. Listen to what people say to you. Keep an open heart. Be adaptable. Be ready to change. Our lives are not set in stone. We never know what's going to come out of the blue and knock us down. And we got to be ready to pick ourselves up and go forward. Be appreciative of your life. I've had a lot of things taken away, and I've had even more given back. So appreciate the people around you. Appreciate the things you get to experience. Appreciate every second of your life. This is what the Colonel has taught me, that people are important, that the community you're a part of is important. And that's my message for you. Thank you.